Yes. Do we live in a simulation? Yes. I mean, no. I mean, well, it's more
You peep how the boy just showed the red and the blue pill, right?
complicated. Today we're going to talk about the simulation hypothesis. Let's just get started with what this hypothesis really is. So let's assume, for the sake of argument, that as time goes on, computers get ever more powerful. They get better and better, more and more efficient, and get bigger and bigger, and they can do more complex things. Let's say that at some point in the distant future, doesn't matter when, it could be next year, it could be 100,000 years from now, it doesn't matter for this argument, that computers become so powerful, so incredibly vast, capable of crunching so many numbers that they can simulate the entire universe. Yeah, and yeah, this is pure sci-fi, but let's go there. For this argument, let's say we have a computer the size of a planet.
That's no moon.
That uses a black hole as a
Remind you of our robots, don't it?
power source. It is like 100% computer, and it is so powerful that it can simulate the entire universe down to some subatomic level, and it can recreate all the physics, and from all the physics comes all the chemistry and the biology, and that eventually in this little simulated universe there are simulated creatures that have consciousness, that they are aware of their surroundings. Now, they don't know that they're in a simulation. They look around, they have their senses, the food tastes the same, everything, the stars on the sky, they have a history of archaeology, the whole deal. They are pure conscious entities. Now, let's also assume that consciousness is consciousness, that a consciousness that resides inside of a skull made of a bunch of meat is the exact same kind of consciousness that resides inside of a computer chip embedded in a simulation. That if you're conscious...
Basically, is he's trying to say that we're avatars? Basically, that's what it sounds like he's trying to say, that we're avatars.
In a simulation, unless somebody tells you, you don't know that you're in a simulation. There are no clues, there are no giveaways, that you're just alive and you're living your life and you're watching YouTube videos and you're just doing what you normally do. It seems fair to say, this argument goes, that eventually computers will become powerful enough to simulate the entire universe and have simulated consciousnesses inside of them. As soon as we have the capability to do that someday in the future, we're going to do it a lot. We're not going to stop at one universe simulation with one artificial consciousness. We're going to have a lot of simulations. We're going to turn that thing on. We're going to turn it off. We're going to have 5 computers in a row, all doing 5 different universes. We are going to restart it. We're going to monkey around with it. We're just going to go nuts with this. This is pretty reasonable. I mean, look at what we do with the simulated worlds that we can create, which are not recreations of our physical universe, but are still pretty impressive. Like look at Minecraft, right? Once you start having Minecraft, you don't stop having Minecraft. You have all these simulated worlds constantly being turned on and turned off and restarted and tweaked and updated. Think of all the entities, all the pigs and zombies. Think of how many there are. And as time goes on, the number of simulated Minecraft entities grows to be an incredibly large number. Once we are capable of building simulations of the universe, this is going to skyrocket, and we are going to have a ton of artificial consciousnesses. And very quickly, the number of artificial consciousnesses, that's what a weird word.
Is he talking about robots taking over the world, or is he talking about our consciousness being transferred into not like robots, basically? Which is kind of like it's kind of hard to explain, but when I get the next video, there's a video here I want to show y'all. They will kind of break it down better for y'all than me.
The number of artificial brains will vastly outnumber the amount of organic brains. And if we assume that there's no special difference between simulated brains and organic brains, then you can ask yourself, what are the chances that you are actually living in a simulation? If you follow this chain of logic, then you end up with a trilemma, which is like a dilemma, but even more so. There are three statements, and at least one of them must be true. If you accept everything else in the argument, at least one of these statements must be true. Statement number one, for some reason, intelligent beings are incapable of developing the computing technology to simulate the entire universe. Okay, maybe that's true. Maybe this never plays out for some reason. Option number two, for some reason, intelligent beings do develop the capability to make universe simulations, but choose not to. It's a possibility. Or option number three, the vast majority of conscious beings are simulated, and therefore you are likely to be in a simulation. Because once we turn this on, if there are...
Basically, I feel as though like he's comparing us to the movie Avatar, and if y'all haven't watched it, y'all should go watch it. It's a real good movie. It's a long ass movie. So grab some popcorn, some Mary Jane, some liquor, sit down, watch that movie. It's a real good movie. But it's crazy that he's comparing our life to the avatars. Maybe I'm tripping, maybe I'm not. But I feel as though like he's comparing our way of living to the Avatar movie.
1 billion meat brains and 99 billion simulated brains, you have a 99% chance, all else being equal, of you being in a simulation. This is the simulation argument. This is the simulation hypothesis put forth.
And my biggest question is, if we're in a simulation, how did we get there? Who put us in a machine to make us feel like we're living in this reality right here? Where is the machine? How do we get back to us? If this is a simulation, if our world right now is like Resident Evil without the zombies in the Matrix.
Or first in 2003 by philosopher Nick Bostrom over at Oxford. And before I dig into poking at this hypothesis, at this argument, we need to talk about what the hypothesis isn't and was it what it is. So let's start with what the simulation hypothesis is definitely not. The simulation hypothesis is definitely not a theory of physics. This does not come to us from our understanding of the physical nature of reality. This does not come to us from a mathematical application of logic to modeling how the universe works.
So where does it come to you from?
The simulation hypothesis does not offer testable predictions. I mean, yes, if we're living in a simulation and the creators of the simulation sent us all a message telling us we're in a simulation, that's technically...
Once again, who's the creator? Who is the creator? That's why I said, growing up, I always wondered, like, yo, if God isn't real, right? Or if God is real, how many gods are there? Like, could aliens really be watching us the way they, they say in the movies and stuff like that? But it's not aliens that we should be really worried about, in my opinion, because if you go to the Bible, let's talk about it in a little bit once we hit the Bible topic, because I don't want to confuse nobody.
Like testable, but not in the physics way. There's no observation we could make to determine if we truly do live in a simulation or not. So this is not a theory of physics. This is not a scientific theory. But this is also not pseudoscience. I've seen some scientists criticize the simulation argument, calling it pseudoscience. Pseudoscience is false science. That's literally the definition of pseudoscience. Pseudoscience is when you're taking some ideas of science, like instrumentation, observation, and lots of cool jargon, and not taking the rest. Like
witchcraft is what he's trying to say. I think he's trying to say witchcraft, and he's comparing the both.
Critical thinking, or an analyzing your own bias, or submitting your work to criticism from your peers, or taking your theories 100% seriously, like UFOlogy or cryptozoology or ghost hunting. This is pseudoscience because it looks like science. There's gizmos and there's record keeping, but they don't take their own ideas seriously and actually flesh out their theories and the implications of those theories and look for testable predictions and are willing to be wrong about it, which is an essential ingredient in science.
I'm saying it's all real. Like, a dozen other people say it's all real.
This is a simulation argument. This is a hypothesis. This is not any of that. This is not pseudoscience. This is not pretending to be science. It's simply its own thing, its own way of thinking. This is also not religion. This is not an argument in favor or against a creator or a deity. It just has nothing.
That's why I said I'll leave my opinion that I just had and what I was about to say for when I hop into the topic of the Bible.
Do with it. It's not. Simulation argument is also not a new method of agriculture. There's a long list of things it's not. The simulation argument also doesn't rely on there being an infinite chain of simulated universes where you have an organic universe, and then in that organic universe, they make a simulated universe, and then they make a simulated universe, a universe of universe, and that's how you get all these simulated brains. No, it doesn't rely on that. All it relies is on this happening at least once, where somebody or our descendants make a simulated universe, and then the number of simulated brains gets really, really, really big, vastly outweighing the number of organic brains. That's the cornerstone of the argument. The simulation hypothesis is also not a conclusive argument that we do live in a simulation. The simulation argument that Nick Bostrom put out in 2003 ends with the trilemma that I just discussed, ends with those three options, ends with maybe nobody can do this, maybe nobody chooses to do this, or maybe we do live in a simulation, but it stops there. Of course, you can have your own personal preference. Nick Bostrom has his personal opinions, but you can't attach any odds to that. You can't calculate any odds to that because it ends with the trilemma. That's as far as this argument takes you. And so you can't point to the simulation argument and say, yep, we definitely live in a simulation, or I think we live in a simulation. No, you can't. If you start saying things like, yes, we do, yes, we don't, as you're basing it purely on the simulation argument, you can only stop at the trilemma. Now, what is the simulation hypothesis? It's philosophy. It's philosophy. And philosophy is amazing. It's a shame I see so many scientists and fans of science disparage philosophy, mock philosophy, call it useless. I mean, science is literally a branch of philosophy. I have a PhD that stands for Doctor of Philosophy. Science is philosophy. It's a kind of philosophy. So one group of philosophers telling another group of philosophers they're being useless or not being productive, that's kind of amusing to me.
A debate between sciences of which one is right and which one is wrong. And neither one going by Mother Nature. Crazy thing is, as y'all can see, God is real.
It makes it cringy when I see scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson mocking philosophy, but then following the simulation argument and saying, well, I do think we live in a simulation, or a 50-50 chance we live in a simulation. But this is a philosophical argument. Weren't you just making fun of philosophers and now you're agreeing with them? So it'd be funny if it weren't so cringy. So I encourage you, if you see a scientist making fun of philosophy, I need you to slap them for me. And just love philosophy, asking these kinds of questions about the fundamental nature of reality and questioning our assumptions is good and fruitful and useful because it keeps us moving forward. The simulation argument is the latest and perhaps most sophisticated version of a long line of thinking called the skeptical argument. You know, skepticism is, just asking questions.
All this is crazy, right?
And not believing on face value. If I tell you that the universe is 13.77 billion years old, you say, well, how do you know? That's skepticism. That's healthy skepticism. And I'm a big fan of skepticism. There are different levels of skepticism that you can apply, and you can go all the way to the maximum level of skepticism where I say the universe is 13.77 billion years old. And you say, how do you know? And I talk about cosmic microwave background and dark matter and a lambda CDM cosmology and all that. And then you say, okay, how do you know what you're looking at is real? How do you know that this is the universe? What if this is all just
facts? Like, what? How can somebody tell us that what we're touching right now is fake? That this table, this phone is fake? How can you prove to me that it's a simulation? That it's just nothing but thin air? It's something that I'm imagining. Could I be imagining seeing people in the chat right now?
just an illusion? This is an important question because it stops us, it checks us, and it makes us really consider what is the nature of reality, what is the nature of our observations, what is the nature of our perception of reality. And that these are important questions to ask, right? There's been, 1,000 philosophy papers written about the Matrix, because the Matrix encapsulated a lot of these long-standing philosophical ideas. For example, philosophers going back.
See, if y'all listen to the creator of the Matrix, she tells y'all the truth. She had a vision of what's going to happen in the future, how the robots are going to look in the near future, how they're not going to look robotic no more. They're going to look like humans, and we're not even going to be able to tell the clones and much more. And people took it as entertainment. So I always say, listen, there's messages in a lot of these movies, there's messages in these books, there's messages in these shows, there's messages in these music, there's messages through poems, there's messages through everything. But we're not paying attention. We're focused on the trend, on the entertainment, the distractions. Me, I'm woke.
Back to antiquity and probably prehistory have been debating this and thinking about this. Is there some evil demon with magical powers that is tricking us? Are we in a dream? Yes, we can tell the difference between dreams and not dreams, but that's only once we wake up. When you're in the dream, it's kind of hard to know you're in a dream. Maybe the universe was just created 5 minutes ago with all of our memories intact and all the photons and all the chemical reactions midway. We wouldn't know the difference. Maybe we live in a simulation. So if we are going to take the simulation argument or simulation hypothesis seriously, we have to take it seriously on the grounds it was made of, which is philosophy grounds, which is on the basis of argumentation and rationality. So we can't apply religious techniques to this. We can't apply science, say, well, no physics observation says we live in a sim. Okay, no, this is a philosophical argument. So let's take it seriously as a philosophical argument. There are a couple different ways to address the simulation argument. One way is to accept the line of arguing that leads to that trilemma, that choice, that three-pronged choice. Accept all those arguments and say, okay, all that's totally cool. And then talk about the trilemma itself and weigh the various options and see if one option is more favorable than the other. But you don't even have to do that. You have a choice. You can read and understand the simulation argument, end at the trilemma, and then throw your hands up in the air and say, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we live in a simulation. Maybe it's impossible to build simulations like that. Maybe if we had the capability, we just would choose not to. If we found out that all the zombies and pigs in Minecraft were conscious entities, we might actually stop playing Minecraft. I don't know that for sure, but it's a possibility. And
to me, is a game. It's not real. It's in the computer. It's technology. It's something that you could turn off and go back to. I can't turn my life off unless I go to sleep or die. I'm sorry, but I'm speaking reality.
Just don't know. You don't have to make a choice. The simulation argument does not compel you to make a choice about the nature of reality. It just raises these questions, and you can be fine with that ambiguity if you want to be. Or you can accept all the arguments that went into the simulation hypothesis and argue for one option or the other. You can say, okay, you know what? I really do think we live in a simulation, but you need to back that up because there needs to be more argument, more logic to support why you think we live in a simulation, because the simulation argument itself stops at the trilemma, and that's the end of that road. And you need more logic and more work. You need to do more homework if you want to say we live in a simulation. But you might say, you know what? It does seem likely that we're going to build these supercomputers. It does seem likely that we're not going to stop ourselves. It does seem likely that we're going to have a bajillion simulated brains. Therefore, I am likely to be a simulated brain. Yeah. Or you might argue we never reach the capability to build computers like that because we'll destroy ourselves. We'll kill ourselves.
But it's here. The computer's been here. They have been here. We know that there's clones walking amongst us. We know there's robots walking amongst us. They already got the canine dogs. Everything is here. Okay, we know it. The question is, what are we going to do and what's going to happen?
So there's some filter applied that prevents us from building computers like that, which is kind of dark, but it's also an option if you accept the rest of the arguments in the simulation hypothesis. Or you can say, yes, of course we'll have the ability to simulate universes, but of course we're not going to, because that would be immoral, that'd be wicked, that anyone who tries to do that, we're just gonna.
But they're already doing it. They already trying to pass a bill and everything to try to get robots to, you know, be lawyers, to be robocops, to have us as cyborgs and much more. It's here.
Just put them in prison for the rest of their lives. We're not going to allow that stain on humanity by allowing ourselves to do it. And so we're not going to have this giant number of simulated brains, and I'm likely to be organic. That is fine. You are allowed to make any one of those cases. The simulation argument, as long as you accept all the assumptions that go in, allow you to say any one of those statements, but you have to back those up on your own. And so that's your journey. My journey that we're going to explore for the rest of the video.
So who here on this chat, who on a replay could prove to me that we're being run by a computer and that God isn't real? Who could prove that to me?
Is questioning the assumptions that go into the simulation argument. The simulation argument, in order to reach that trilemma, assumes certain things. It assumes that eventually we will have a computer powerful enough to simulate the universe.
Yeah.
It assumes that once that computer...
And everything that he's saying is everything that Sophia Stewart said when she wrote her book. She had a vision back in the early 80s, and everything that she had a vision about is happening. It's just crazy that everybody went by the way the movies were. It's the same thing with the Titanic. Everybody was distracted with the movie Titanic, a romance movie, yada, 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 without realizing the truth that lies beneath, the reality underneath that movie, what it was really based about, and the hidden truths behind it.
Computer switches on, there'll be a vast number of simulated consciousnesses. It assumes that simulated brains are identical to organic brains. Their experiences are just the same. And it assumes that everything else is equal, so you can just go ahead and calculate those odds and conclude that you're likely in a simulation. That is the argument. That's what those are the assumptions it makes. We don't have to believe these assumptions. We can talk about these assumptions. For example, it may not be possible to build a simulation of the universe that is 100% faithful. In Bostrom's original work in 2003, he addressed this. He said, okay, maybe you don't need a quantum description of the entire universe throughout the entire universe. Maybe you have some sort of zooming or multi-scale thing where if I just look at a table, it's just a table, but then I look at it through a microscope and then it boots up locally the chemical description of a table. And if I look at it with a scanning electron microscope, it boots up the quantum nature of the table, but only in that area so it can save resources and power. I don't think that's quite possible, that kind of zooming based on perception and observation, because there are so many macroscopic properties of the universe that only come about.
Now, what I do know exists is the hacking. I know that through your camera, you know, your laptop, other people through other places using their devices can sit here and actually get a glimpse of the inside of your home through your phone. The same thing. They can steal your information, all that. Like, I do know that all exists. I've seen the movies Resident Evil. I've seen the movies Matrix. And you know what I got out of it? That somewhere in the near future, we're already in it though. I just figured that one out not so long ago, that a lot of the stuff that we're going to be in is not going to be real. It's going to look like it's going to be an illusion to us. And we're going to have to, you know, determine reality and fiction.
Out through a collection of
reality and fantasy.
Countless quantum interactions like heat and temperature and pressure. The temperature and pressure of the air in this room and the air in your room depend on countless interactions. And without those countless interactions, you know, we wouldn't have the thermodynamics. And yes, we have a thermodynamic description, but in order to make that work, what's underlying it is a more quantum nature of reality that you do have to simulate. Or the interactions of radiation the interplay of light and matter. These are happening at subatomic scales all over the place. The interaction of electrons with the vacuum energy. They're happening all the time and are required for stability in our universe. Like, I think you have to go down to all the way the pure quantum level and probably beyond quantum level. We do not have a theory of everything. We do not understand all the physics in the universe. And in order to build a universe simulator that is 100% faithful.
And that's what I said. If we don't understand everything about the earth and Mother Nature and everything around us, how can we say we live in a simulation? How can you prove to me that we're living? Well, it's crazy as we know that the technology is out there. We know what they want to do with it. But I get where everybody's coming from. I get it. I understand. But y'all can't take away the reality that God is real. Now, there are questions to the Bible, yes, because we've been lied to about it so much. But this right here, I would love to hear y'all opinions.
We need to have all those. We need to have a theory of everything. And if we don't have a theory of everything, then by necessity, our universe simulator will just be an approximation of the original universe, in which case there will be a difference between simulated brains and organic brains, and the argument falls apart. So I think we do need to 100% capture the entire microphysics of the universe in order to get a simulation to work. The best way I can explain this argument is that if we want our simulated universe to be 100% accurate, then that simulated universe doesn't just have conscious beings, it has conscious beings capable of building their own simulator.
Blessings, the meal ticket. How you doing? Bless up.
Simulation needs to be sophisticated enough that it can have a simulated universe inside of it. And
guys, if y'all haven't checked out the meal ticket, go check him out.
And the simulated universe is going to be a very complex thing, and it may be beyond the computing capabilities of the original computer, the original simulation, to have a simulation of itself inside of it. You know, this is a computing thing. You can't have a processor inside of a processor that is just as fast, just as capable, captures all the complexities and computations that the original processor has. So as the simulation progresses, it is going to lose fidelity, it is going to lose faithfulness, and so there will be differences between simulated brains and organic brains. And the argument assumes that simulated and organic brains are identical, that our experiences are identical, because if there is a difference, then you just don't know. So we may not even be able to build a computer that can simulate our universe. That is a big assumption to me. Another big assumption.
But they're trying. And that's the craziest part. Like, if they would just be real about it, they're trying. They're really trying.
Is in counting the number of simulated brains and assuming that that number of simulated brains is going to grow exponentially. Maybe it's incredibly difficult to do this. Maybe there's only 10 simulated brains for every 1,000 organic brains, because it turns out it requires an enormous amount of resources. It's not necessarily a given that once, even with superhuman planet-sized computers with black hole batteries, that we can have the computing power to do this. And we don't know ahead of time. Let's say there are 99 billion simulated brains and 1 billion organic brains. You can't just directly assume that there is, therefore a 99% chance that you're simulated. Yes, it is a fair assumption, but it's still an assumption. You know, if I give you a coin, at first glance, you'll assume it's a fair coin. It's 50-50 heads or tails. But the only way to truly know if it is a fair coin is to flip it a bunch and measure the outcomes and make sure it's 50-50 heads and tails. Yes, given 99 billion simulated brains and 1 billion organic brains, you can assume that there's a 99% chance that you are simulated, but it's not a guarantee.
There's no guarantee on the box.
The only way to actually study that probability, the chances, the odds, is to make observations and experiments, and you can't because the simulated universe is identical to the original universe. And so you can't truly know the probabilities. And so that is a major assumption. Here's another approach to this. This is courtesy Brian Eggleston at Stanford, who said that Nick Bostrom's original argument relied on our descendants, our future descendants, thousands of years from now, building a supercomputer and having a simulated universe. Once they do that, the number of simulated brains skyrockets, and then we can assume that we're likely to be in such a simulation. But.
And once again, you only proved my theory right. Sophia Stewart revealed all this, and if y'all pay attention to her books and if y'all listen to her interviews, she talked about this, especially back then, especially when she was fighting for her book back, you know, the lawsuits and all that stuff. She exposed a lot of this stuff, and we're living it right now. We're living it right now.
But we can't use the simulated brains that our descendants make because we'll know they're simulated. You know, if you were around tomorrow and tomorrow we're able to build a universe in a box, and that universe in a box has conscious entities that